almost live from the Herbert I. Greenberg Studios at WHIG. It's Up Late with Sam Bass.
Thank you, Scott Smith, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Up Late with Sam Bass, brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Sparkling Creations. Folks, whether you're planning a party or a baby shower, hey, head over to Winston Avenue, right here in Rocky Mount, or check them out at their website, asparklingcreation.com. They've got everything you need, trust me. They've got everything you might need, including they have these new cool swig cups. And you know how much I love a good swig. So, I will say one thing about this cup. It actually holds a little bit more than I realized. I had gone over to the Bakelite Boys. They have a free concert on Monday nights in Wilson. And I said, I'm gonna break in my swig cup that I got over at Sparkling Creations. And I filled that bad boy up with bourbon and went over there with the social area where you can drink in. I didn't have my little blue sticker on it, but I still used it. And make a long story short, it hit me a little harder than I thought. Got in a little bit of a doghouse at home. But anyway, I live to tell about it. So while we're talking about our great sponsors, I want to also talk about Metro Maintenance. Did you know that they handle regular plumbing, but they're also certified in well water systems? So whatever your issues might be, plumbing related, not your personal issues, call today for top-notch service. Did you know that every day they have 13 trucks on the road going to over 6 counties? They're all over the place. We also want to talk about my good friend Phil over in Wilson at Phil's Music Exchange. If you're looking for a treasure trove of music goodies, Phil's Music Exchange has you covered. The CDs, DVDs, cassettes, 8-tracks, which I buy from him, VHS, video games, you name it, he's got it. Whether you shop online or in his store, he's got everything for you that you would ever want for your music collection. Plus, they ship worldwide. So support this local business and go see Phil. Folks, we've got an incredible show for you tonight. Our special guest is none other than a young man by the name of Billy Cuthrell. He's the founder and CEO of Progressive Music Center. That's hard to say. And did I mention he's also a friend of the Red Hot Chili Peppers? More on that later. But before we bring Billy on, let's dive into some of the latest news. So many of you know a couple of weeks ago, our former president, our future president, our former president is going to be our future president. Donald Trump was in Rocky Mount. That's confusing. So yours truly, which would be me, actually had an opportunity to sit down and interview him. Believe it or not. I know you're thinking, how did you score an interview of this magnitude? But the proof is right here, folks. Here's the exclusive look at my interview with the Donald. Let's take a look. President Trump, welcome to our humble set. We are so honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
And my first question for you is, if you could build a wall around anything, what would it be, where, and why?
I'm building a wall, okay? I'm building a wall.
What's that?
I'm just looking at my hair. I don't like it.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not that fond of my hair these days. Please continue.
Am I allowed to go back and recomb it?
But let's move on. If you could fire anybody from history, who would it be and what would you say?
A little bit of a long answer. I hope you have time.
But let's move on. Next question. In the past, you've looked into election frauds, possible crimes committed by the Biden family, and you've even looked at a solar eclipse without wearing the glasses. Is there anything particular that you're going to look into once you take office again in 2025?
The answer is, I don't frankly care.
Me neither. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. President Trump, you've been known for your tweets. If you could tweet something to your younger self, what would it be?
You are being treated so unfairly.
Next question. If you could have any celebrity as your vice president, who would it be? Me, I'm sure. I think he might have been getting a little annoyed with me. Let's keep watching. On a more serious note here, you've made enemies on both sides of the aisle. I've made enemies myself too. So while we're on that topic, what do you think of my nemesis, John Check?
He's a Mexican. We're building a wall between here and Mexico.
Well, actually, I'm pretty sure that he's not a Mexican, but he does like Mexican food. Eat a lot of jalapeno.
I have no idea who he is. Never saw him, never heard of him, and don't want to hear of him.
Yes, I know this interview is supposed to be about you, but I want to ask you something else about me, okay? What do you think of our audience? How many people do you think watch our show?
I think the number is going to be 15 million people by the time you end this. By the end of this year, I think the real number is going to be 15 million people. They come from prisons. They come from mental institutions, insane asylums. They say, sir, please don't use that term, but it's true.
Switching gears a little bit, would you ever consider posing for Playgirl magazine?
I certainly might if I think it's appropriate.
You've had quite a few famous catchphrases over the years, like drain the swamp or you're fired. Do you have any new catchphrases in the works? Maybe something like make my hair great again?
What I say is very simple, because you can't put words in my mouth like that.
But let's move on. You've been a businessman, a TV star, and a president. If you could start a new career tomorrow, what would it be?
When I was throwing paper towels to the back, they were all having fun. Everybody, and the fake news came, oh, that was very disrespectful to be throwing towels.
Next question.
Okay, that's enough.
Sorry, I apologize.
Let's go. I'll see you in a little while. Thanks.
Where'd he go? Was there something I said? Maybe it was that Mexican food he had for lunch. Possible? Well, that's it, folks. My exclusive interview with Donald J. Trump. Isn't it funny how politicians have a way of avoiding the actual questions and just saying whatever they want to sometimes? That interview is proof in the pudding. So don't you walk away. We're going to be right back with Billy Cuthrell. Sit tight.
Metro Maintenance has provided fast, reliable services in Nash, Edgecombe, and Halifax counties for over 35 years. Metro Maintenance offers services for residential, commercial, and institutional facilities. These services include heating and cooling, electrical, plumbing, and general repairs. Our numerous years of experience, knowledge, and resources help us to accomplish our mission of serving our customers with superior service achieved through integrity and hard work. All of our work is guaranteed. For service, call 252-977-2730 or find us on the web at metro-maintenance.com.
If you're planning a party, wedding, birthday party, baby shower, or corporate event, Sparkling Creations can make it memorable for you. With tents, tables, bouncy houses, and more. We can even provide a fire pit for outdoor events. If you want to be adventurous, we have a mechanical bull. You name the event, and Sparkling Creations has you covered. Located at 976 North Winstead Avenue, Sparkling Creations, where we make every event sparkle.
Phil's Music Exchange of Wilson offers thousands of vinyl LPs, CDs, cassettes, 8 tracks. They even have reel-to-reels, DVDs, Blu-rays, VHS, video games, an abundance of music for the music lover. Check them out today. Phil's Music Exchange in Tarboro, 207 West Tarboro Street, downtown Wilson, or philsmusicexchange.com.
We're back, and as promised, Billy Cuthrell is here. Billy, thank you so much for coming and doing the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So if you don't know who this guy is, I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. So you started off as a drummer. Tell me how that journey began.
Oh, man. So, started off once a drummer, always a drummer. Still a drummer now, still perform. But I was living in Ayden, North Carolina. And I walked next door. I had a neighbor that I'm still really good friends with to this day. And her father, for some reason, when I walked next door that night, I would go over and kind of hang out with him. And I walked over, and her dad, which to this day I still don't understand why he was doing this, but he had, in this day and age, he had a VHS cassette, right? It wasn't on YouTube, was far from even existing. But he had a VHS cassette of Led Zeppelin, The Song Remains the Same, playing on the VHS. And I walked in, he said, "You ever seen this?" And I said, "No, I have no clue what that is." He said, "Yeah, sit down a minute and watch it." I said, "Okay." Sat down on the couch, and it was the segment, and the Lord works in mysterious ways. I think He put me there at that time and had that segment playing. But I sat down. It was a segment where John Bonham, the now deceased drummer for Led Zeppelin, was playing the drum solo part for Moby Dick.
Right.
And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I sat there for about 15 minutes and watched it. And I just knew right then, I said, I've got to do that. I've got to play. I can do that. I don't know what it was. I just I can do it. And I got up and walked right. I just stood up, walked out. I didn't say bye or anything. I just walked out, went right back to my house right next door. I walked in. My parents were watching TV. And I walked in and I said, I got to have a drum set. And they said, what? So I walked out a non-drummer. When I came in, I was a drummer. It happened just like that. And I went to school, and I was hanging with the wrong crowd and doing the wrong things, 9th grade, 8th, 9th grade.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I was not doing the right things at all, and not hanging out with the right people. But was in school, and I was sitting in the hallway one day, and for the umpteenth time, and I've been kicked out of class. And I was sitting in the hallway, and the band director, a guy named Miles Huggins, walked by. And Miles heading to the office, and he saw me, and he said, you're always in the hallway. And he kind of walked by, and he stopped and came back. He said, "You're always in the hallway. What is going on with you?" And we started talking, and he said, what are you going to do with yourself? What are you going to do with your life? And I think I said something really clever, like, "I want to play drums, dude," or something. I had hair down to here at the time. Probably had a Megadeth shirt on or something. And he said, "Okay, well, if you want to play, come down this afternoon and band rehearsal after school." And I'd never played in a band before, never really played drums before. Right. And I thought, I'm not doing that. Only nerds hang out down there. And somehow, stroke of luck, my ride left me that afternoon, so I had no choice. And I kind of walked down there looking for a ride home. And I stuck my head in the band room just looking to see if one of my friends was in there to see if I could motion to him, I need a ride, or whatever. And Miles says, "Oh, hey, Billy, come on in." I went, No, I'm good. "No, come on in." I said, "No, I'm good." "No, come on in." I said, "All right." And I walked in there, and 45 minutes later I walked out. Life had completely changed, and I'll never look back. Miles Huggins, I really credit him for everything I've done up to this point.
So tell me about this so-called camping trip that you told your parents about.
Yeah, so that was 9th grade, and I had started to...
9th grade, folks.
9th grade, and this was back when you still rode pterodactyls to school and things like that. And so I had a dinosaur of a pickup truck. I had an old Ford Ranger pickup truck, and 4 on the floor, and I was starting to learn to play a little bit, and just decided, I'm going to move to California. I'm going to be the greatest drummer on the planet. This is what I'm going to do. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to find the best teacher on the planet. I'm going to find the guy, because I'm not going to find it in Ayden, obviously. Uh-huh. There were great drummers, but the guy wasn't there, And so I decided I'm going to go hunt down the best there is. And there was a guy named Jim Chapin. And Jim, his son, a lot of people know Jim from his son. Jim's son was Harry Chapin. And a lot of people know Harry from his famous song, Cats in the Cradle. So Jim had written a book back in the 40s that changed the face of modern drumming. But before Jim wrote the book, if you played ding, 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 if you did that on a ride cymbal, right, you did the same thing here. Ding, 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 ding. Right now, what happens is with, ding, 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 ding. right? So you start breaking these two things apart. It becomes two-way independence, right? Well, Jim wrote that. So before Jim did that, that had never been seen before. That was it was a modern, wow, this is a modern technique. And so I said, well, you know, I want to learn to be the best. So I'm going to go find the best. So I told my parents that I'm going camping. And it was Memorial Day weekend. And my parents said, great, you don't camp. And I went, I do now. You know? And so I got a map and I got in my little truck and I left Memorial Day weekend. I had my driver's license all of maybe a couple of months and drove all the way to Sag Harbor and went up there and got to Sag Harbor, drove overnight and walked into a little bodega in Sag Harbor. And I said, I'm looking for Jim Chapin. And the guy says, oh, the Chapins, yeah, they live 4 houses, number 8, brownstone number 8. You'll see it on the door. I said, okay. So I go down there, beat on the door, and lo and behold, door opens up. There's Jim Chapin standing there. And I said, I had my whole spiel. I said, my name is Billy Cuthrell. I just drove all the way from Greenville, North Carolina. Came up here to see you. I want to find the greatest drummer on the planet. And he, whoa, wait a minute, kid. You know, and I started out again. You know, my name is Billy Cuthrell, and did that spiel. And Jim says, he looks out and looks down the sidewalk, and I guess he thought cameras were going to come out. He thought it was going to be Candid Camera or something. And I went in, and Manya, his wife, nice Russian lady, she made me something to eat, and then Jim had filmed everything in his cellar. He had done this video called Speed, Power, Control, and Endurance, and it's still one of the most watched videos on YouTube for drumming. But we went down there, and I just remember getting in the cellar and looking around going, wow. You know, there's a guy named Dom Famularo who had filmed it. Dom was a very famous drummer as well. And there's the drum set that he had used in the video. It's like, man, I mean, you know, just, this is incredible. You know, I'm really here. You know, I can't believe I'm here. You know, and he showed me all this Moeller system stuff, you know, and it was a whole technique of how to play, and you know, just told me how bad I sucked, and you know, man, you need a lot of help. You know, I was like, well, that's why I'm here, and stayed for a day, and then I drove all the way back, and I didn't see Jim again for a while. It was a long while went by, and then I saw him. I went. I can't remember where I was. I saw him again somewhere briefly, and we kind of reconnected, but I wanted to go back up to his house and never did. And so then after that, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to be in the business. And if I'm going to be in the business, then I've got to really be in the business, and I have to go to Nashville or California. And so I decided I was going to go to my first NAMM show. And NAMM is NAMM, it's National Association of Music Merchants, and it's a very big non-public convention, and I decided I'm going to go to NAMM. And so I called up NAMM, got on my rotary phone. Kids, back in the day, when you rode your pterodactyl, you had to dial a phone like this. And I made this $3 or $4 million long distance phone call because, you know, back in the day, when you call long distance, man, you know, you better get prepared to pay. And so I called all the way to California, called them folks in California, and got the people at NAMM on the phone. I said, I need a NAMM badge. And the lady said, great. What store and what publication do you work for? And I said, none. I'm Billy Cuthrell. Well, I studied with Jim Chapin once, you know, and I thought I was going to do it. And she said, well, you have to have a publication or you have to work for a retailer to get in. And I said, why? You know, and she said, well, it's closed to the public. And she said, well, you know, if you can get a media badge, you can get in. I said, that's great, you know. So I called around and tried to get a media badge. I called Modern Drummer and all the drum magazines, and of course they went, no, you know, and hung up, you know. And so I said, well, you know what, I'll make my own publication. And so I set about town to find the one guy that had a computer, because back in these days when you have pterodactyls and you're dialing rotary phones, nobody had a computer, right? Not like today. And this is, you know, early 90s, 90, 91, 92, somewhere in there. And I found my one friend, Trey Orman, that had a computer. And I went to Trey's house, and it was in his bedroom. And I said, I've got to come up with a magazine. You know, I got to get a credential to get in. And Trey said, okay, you know, how are we going to do it? And I said, well, you know, we're going to figure it out. And so within a couple of weeks, we figured out how to use Microsoft Publisher, which at the time was the most powerful public desktop publishing system you could get. And we started laying out this magazine, and then I had to go find a printer, and I had to find a distributor, and because NAMM, they wanted some numbers. They didn't want just, yeah, I'm making a magazine, you know.
Right.
And so I ended up getting in touch with the people at the Daily Reflector in Greenville, and they were nice enough to tell me that their newspaper was printed in Mount Olive on a web press. And they said, call them, they'll print it for you. And I said, okay, sure. So I called them, and Mount Olive walked me through the dimensions and how to do it. And they said, you know, like I'd done it before. And I finally told them, I said, I've never done this before. You know, I've never in my life done this. I said, okay, we'll get it together, bring it over. So I did. And I needed an interview. I needed a top interview.
Right.
So I called Jim Chapin.
Of course you did.
Called Jim. And Jim said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. You know, I said, great. And called Jim, and I got a little micro cassette recorder. And this is how I did the interview. So Jim, tell me about blah, blah, blah. And I would put the micro cassette recorder to the phone, you know, like that, and hope that it picked it up, you know. And I found a lady in town that would take the interview, pardon me, and she would type it out. She would transcribe it for me. And I said, great, you know. So she transcribed it, and so she did that. And then I said, well, you know what? I need some ads. I need some sponsors too, right? So I went out and talked to the drum shops. I got Steve Johnson at 2112 in Raleigh at the time to be a sponsor. And I think I did an interview with him. But anyway, we get the thing together, and I took it over to Mount Olive, to the press, and they put it on a table and showed me how to do it. And this is what, you know, that's what we got. And that was it. That was it. And there's Jim's interview, and it was on tabloid size, and 1995. And so we did it, and that's how I got my NAMM badge. And actually,
right here, right?
Yeah, and actually, you know what? I told you wrong. This is actually the second. This is actually the second one. The first one, I don't even know if I have a copy of the first one anymore, but this is the second issue. But the first issue is what got me that. That was my first NAMM badge. And 32 NAMM badges later.
Wow.
32 years of that thing. And it's incredible. But my first show, I just remember, you know, we drove all night. But back to this, I did this. We printed 60,000 copies.
God.
And it cost me like $300. I think I borrowed the money from like every friend I had or something. And we did 60,000 of them. We bundled them, and we wrapped them in Piggly Wiggly. We got Piggly Wiggly grocery bags, and we cut them open, wrapped them up in Piggly Wiggly bags, bundled them, stamped our return address on it, and we were calling, again, we were spending, you know, hundreds of dollars making long distance phone calls. We were calling overseas, we were calling London, every drum shop I could get a hold of. And we would call, hey, I'm with Drummer's Jargon. And, you know, yeah, this is Billy Cuthrell with Drummer's Jargon. We're a big drum publication in the United States. You've probably heard of us before. You hadn't anyway, but no problem. We're going to send you for free 500 copies. Oh, you want 600? Oh, you want 300? We're going to send you 6 anyway, you know, because I had to have some numbers, you know, for NAMM. They wanted it audited, you know.
Right.
And so that's how I did it. And sent them out and got my first NAMM badge. And, you know, it just all kind of culminated from there. The rest is history.
So I want to back up a little bit.
Sure.
So your first band was Fountain of Youth.
Right, yep.
Tell me a little bit about that and when you started that.
Yeah, so I was, during this period in time, during Drummer's Jargon and this 95 time period frame, I was just kind of coming out of that band Fountain of Youth. So when I was in the 9th grade, and I was talking about my band director, Miles Huggins, walking by and kind of saving me from, you know, the depths of hell in a handbasket sort of thing. I decided I was going to start a band. I said, you know, if I'm going to be a drummer, man, you got to have a band. Can't be a solo drummer, right? You know. And so I recruited my best friend growing up, Steve McGlawhorn, who was a little bit older than I was, to play bass. And I'd already been kind of fooling around with some local guys in the Greenville area, a guy named Reed Williamson, and another friend of mine, Steve Seaberg. We had already been kind of playing, which, funny thing, that's how I knew my wife from them. We kind of met her way back in the day, back when she was in high school, I was in high school. We kind of all ran that same group. We never really hung out, you know. And it's funny how small the world is, you know, when you really start thinking about it. But so I was kind of playing with those guys and just doing my thing. And I recruited Steve, and I said, you know, this is the kind of band I want to put together. And then we went out and got a couple of guys who were living in the Greenville area, much older than us. And we started this band, Fountain of Youth. And I was still in high school. Everybody else had graduated, and the band just really took off. We just had a unique sound. We just had something real different at the time, and we.
So I did read
really
that you ended up opening for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Tell
we
me
did.
about that.
We did. We opened for a lot of bands at the time. So we were running that same route that a lot of bands were running. We were playing the Attic in Greenville, which Joe Toronto had at the time. That was really my first introduction into music too. Joe hired me. I was a 14-year-old kid skateboarding around downtown Greenville. And I'm out there on the sidewalk one day, and there used to be a place on the corner downtown Greenville, which is now a skate shop, but it's called Rocket Music. And we all hung out in there. And Joe came out and he said, "Hey, you want to work the Ramones show tonight?" And I said, "Of course I want to work the Ramones show tonight," And he let me in to do that. And so we were all kind of growing up in that scene and that kind of that general area. And because of that, you just became friends with people. You just knew them, right? And so one of the bands we became friends with was Hootie and the Blowfish. We knew Darius and Sony and those guys pretty well. And so we had management out of Raleigh, a guy named Dick Hodge. And we actually had management out of Greenville first. And then we were kind of, in the music business, you learn really quick. Back in the day, you could kind of get sold almost like a commodity, right? It was like, if another label wanted you or another management company wanted to have a piece of it, they could make deals. And next thing you know, you're being booked by 2 or 3 different management labels. But so we ended up doing some work with Hootie and the Blowfish through their same management company, Fishco, which was a guy named Rusty Harmon down in South Carolina. And we ended up moving from that. We quickly figured out we weren't the right match with Fishco. And, it's kind of like oil and vinegar kind of thing. It just didn't mix very well. Right, yeah. I mean, we all loved each other. We all got along great. Just the music style was really different. Right. And so we ended up moving back to a different management group. And they got us a lot of opening dates. One of the opening dates was with Red Hot Chili Peppers. And at the time, Red Hot Chili Peppers were big, but they weren't what they are now.
Right.
They were big, don't get me wrong, but they weren't the planetary superstars they are now. And that was just a really fun time period with that band because we were just traveling all the time. And you're young, you're making a lot of money. My parents, I remember a conversation we had at a school event because I was playing so much, I was missing a lot of school. And, we would play a show and I would come home at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and try to get to school the next day. And I would sit in class, like this. Oh God, it's like, man, I'm just dying here. And my parents, we were at an open house or something, and they were kind of talking about my long hair and on my late nights and blah, blah, blah. And I just remember Miles Huggins stepped in again, my band director, and he said, "That long hair is making him a lot of money, though." And he was right. Yeah. And for that time frame, I was making good money. And but we were opening for bands and traveling and doing that kind of thing. And then I just kind of got to a point where I said, I think I want to do something else. I don't want to keep doing this. I want something more stable because trying to sit around wait for the phone to ring for a gig can get scary.
So I want to talk to you about your friendship that you forged with Chad from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay.
We're going to hold up one a minute. We're going to take a word from our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to hear that story.
Maintenance has provided fast, reliable services in Nash, Edgecombe, and Halifax counties for over 35 years. Metro Maintenance offers services for residential, commercial, and institutional facilities. These services include heating and cooling, electrical, plumbing, and general repairs. Our numerous years of experience, knowledge, and resources help us to accomplish our mission of serving our customers with superior service achieved through integrity and hard work. All of our work is guaranteed. For service, call 252-977-2730 or find us on the web at metro-maintenance.com.
If you're planning a party, wedding, birthday party, baby shower, or corporate event, Sparkling Creations can make it memorable for you. With tents, tables, bouncy houses, and more. We can even provide a fire pit for outdoor events. If you want to be adventurous, we have a mechanical bull. You name the event, and Sparkling Creations has you covered. Located at 976 North Winstead Avenue, Sparkling Creations, where we make every event sparkle.
Phil's Music Exchange of Wilson offers thousands of vinyl LPs, CDs, cassettes, 8 tracks. They even have reel-to-reels, DVDs, Blu-rays, VHS, video games, an abundance of music for the music lover. Check them out today. Phil's Music Exchange in Tarboro, 207 West Tarboro Street, downtown Wilson, or philsmusicexchange.com.
We're back with Billy Cuthrell. So before the break, we were talking about the relationship you formed with Chad Smith of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so, Chad and myself, first, to be real clear, Chad and myself don't hang out. Like, he doesn't come to the house. I don't hang out at his house. We're not buddies sitting on the couch. I mean, I think a lot of people misconstrue that sometimes. But so Chad's brother, Brad, they were named after saints, by the way, Chad and Brad. So a lot of people are like, oh, okay. But
Saint Brad?
Saint Brad.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was told. But
I'll take it.
His brother, Brad, I was so fast forwarding years later as I started working in the industry and I got further into NAMM and that sort of thing. There was a fellow, Brad Smith, that was on a couple of boards of directors with me. I was on the board for an organization called Percussion Marketing Council, so they do playdrums.com. And I always knew Brad, but never really put two and two together. But we were in California at a NAMM show out there, and he said, hey, you want to go to a party tonight? I was like, okay, sure. And I said, where is it? And he said, oh, brother's house. He lives out here. I was like, oh, okay. And I guess he just assumed that I knew Chad was Brad's brother or whatever. And so they picked us up, and we rode up there. And, it took us about an hour to get from Anaheim, Southern California, up to the Malibu area where Chad was. And we go in there, and I didn't think much of it. And I said, is there a restroom? I said, yes, down the hall. And I went in there, and there's a Grammy sitting on the back of the toilet. And I was like, that's kind of nice. And I thought, well, I'm in the bathroom by myself. Picked the Grammy up, looked at it, and said, Chad Smith, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Stadium Arcadium. I was like, wow, Brad's brother knows Chad Smith. And he's got a Grammy in here. That's pretty great. I still didn't put two and two together. And it wasn't until I came out and Brad was standing there talking to Chad. And I'm like, that's really crazy too. Chad Smith's standing there talking to Brad Smith. And I guess as you get older and the pterodactyls and didn't put it together. And it still took me a while to figure it out. But it turns out he was his brother. And then Chad, through the playdrums.com thing, became a spokesperson. So I was in charge of doing marketing and promotions for the playdrums.com and the Percussion Marketing Council. And we did this big thing called Win Chad, and we were going to take Chad and sneak him into a high school and maybe bring Flea in to play, and they were going to surprise all these high school students and that sort of thing. So I ended up working with Chad for about a year on that, trying to coordinate it and because I had to work around his schedule. And then in the interim, I went to Washington, D.C. with NAMM as a delegate to talk about music education in schools and how important it was. And they love to bring people out that were kind of like me, that have that story of, you're sitting in a hallway and your band director saves you, and that's why music's important in schools and that sort of thing. And it is. I totally agree with that 100%. But Chad was on that. And they said, we want you to bring Chad. So with Brad and myself, we were able to get Chad flown in, and we took him around with us to all the senators' offices and that sort of thing. And just had a really fun weekend with him. But we ended up flying to Pittsburgh over a weekend, or maybe a couple of days during the week or something. I can't remember what it was. But it was filmed. Like, the whole thing was filmed and put out there. We surprised 3,000 kids in a high school with Chad Smith. And he comes running out of the locker rooms in the little auditorium, and then here comes Flea playing bass, and we had a blast with it. It was a lot of fun. And
so during this time, you've told me before, when they had the big Chad Smith, Will Ferrell drum off on Jimmy Fallon, you were with him the day before that, correct?
We were in D.C. Yeah, we were in Washington, and we were sitting in a senator's office. I don't know what senator it was now, but might have been Richard Burr. My niece worked for Burr for a while, and then she worked for several on Capitol Hill. But I don't know. I can't remember. But we we were sitting there, and his phone, and he finally says, "Excuse me for a second." He says, "I need to see what's going on with this." And he looks at it, and he hands it to his, he had an assistant who was with him. She goes, and she says, "Oh, we need to talk for a minute." So they go out in the hallway, he comes back, and come to find out it was I think it was Jimmy Fallon had called or something, and Jimmy Fallon was asking him to fly up that night, and Chad and Will get mistaken for each other a lot.
They look alike.
They look a lot like, yeah, and they get mistaken a lot. And a funny story, we were with Chad at a concert one night, and I'm standing there, we're standing back by the mixing console, and we were watching this show. This was in Santa Ana, and it was Brad, Chad, myself, and a couple other people, and this guy comes up out of the blue, he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here. My brother's never going to believe this. Oh my God, man, he's your biggest fan. He loves you. But I mean, I like you too. My brother loves you. But can we get a picture? My brother will never." And Chad says, "Sure, no problem." You know, and it happened a lot. I mean, you know, and so they gave me the phone, and they're standing there, and I took the picture, and he goes, "My brother's never going to believe it, man, that I met Ricky Bobby and Anchorman," and he starts naming like all the characters that, you know. And Chad goes, "Oh, no problem." He's like, "Man, thank you so much." And he walked off, and I said to Chad, I said, "Does that get old after a while?" And Chad goes, "No." And he said the greatest thing. He said, "I just hope that he treats my fans as good as I treat his." You know, and he said, "I hope Will Ferrell treats my fans like." But Chad was just a really good sport about it. He's a super nice guy, and I haven't seen him in a couple of years. I mean, it's been a while, and I've just COVID came along. Nobody was traveling. You know, I still talk to his brother Brad, you know, quite a bit because we work on some things together now and kind of here and there, you know. But
so if you haven't seen the drum off between Will Ferrell and Chad Smith, go and look on YouTube for it because it's
great.
Just absolutely hilarious.
Well, it's funny listening to him trying to figure out the wardrobe because they want him to wear the same things. So they're trying to figure out the wardrobe with Chad, with us in D.C., and trying to figure out with Will in New York, and it was just, you know, I mean, it just
that's funny stuff.
Yeah, funny, pretty neat.
So you also work with Patrick Swayze and John Travolta on production music. Is that true? Tell me about that.
Well, that goes back to when my wife and myself moved to Wilmington from Greenville, and so we were down there. And what happened is, I was trying to do studio work, and so I was working through I was in a band. I think it was a swing band. I can't remember the name of them now. It's Rockabilly. And we did a rap party for Dawson's Creek, and we were on one of the sound stages. And so the following couple of weeks, I was getting calls to go back to the movie lot, and we were out there, and it was at that time it was Screen Gems at the time, which is now different. It's been sold. Dino De Laurentiis, I think is who ran it. He did Firestarter and that sort of thing. Oh. But you would walk around out there, and there were, you know, here goes. I remember being out there one day, and you know, Patrick Swayze is out there. You know, it's like, man, it was really wild. And but they were out there just doing they did documentary work and stuff like that. And I was in the studio, and they came in. They were in there cutting vocals and that sort of thing. And
pretty cool.
The coolest story about that is I was downtown Wilmington, and I was walking up the sidewalk. I'd been down there for something, and it was really cold. It was a January day, and the wind's blowing straight down the sidewalk, and I'm kind of bundled up like this, trying to walk into the headwind. There's another guy, and he walks by me, and as he walked by me, I thought, man, that guy looks really familiar, and it dawned on me, it's Clint Eastwood. Whoa. And I said, man, it's Clint Eastwood. And I turned around and went back, and he was gone. He went around the corner and just disappeared. It was really wild. And I thought, that's crazy. So a week or so later, I was out on the movie lot, and I had mentioned to somebody out there, I said, I think I saw Clint Eastwood downtown Wilmington. And they went, oh, yeah, he's got an office here now. And he wasn't there. He'd already gone back, but he had a plaque on the door that said Eastwood Productions and that sort of thing. So Wilmington was really, at the time, was really booming with a lot of
Yeah, at the time it really was.
Yeah, before all the tax credits and stuff went away.
So you've been on the cover of a few magazines.
Right, Music Inc., yep. Mm-hmm.
Tell me, Music Inc. and what else?
Well, I wasn't on the cover of Modern Drummer. My name was on the masthead, but Modern Drummer magazine, which is kind of like getting into the Holy Grail, you know. It's like I mean, if you're a drummer, you grew up with Modern Drummer.
Right,
you know?
right.
But I wrote for them, did some articles for them, which was like big turning point for me. It was like, man, you know, I made it. You know, I made it to Modern Drummer. But Music Inc. is I write for Music Inc. now. I still do a column for them called The Retail Doctor. And I've been doing that since 2010 or 11. And through my shops, I ended up with Music Inc. I not only write for them, but I was actually on the cover for them. And this is the second time I was on the cover. The first time was a couple of years before this. I'm the only person to ever be on the cover twice.
Wow.
They've never had anybody on the cover twice, and I made it twice. And so I guess my check cleared, and I made it.
Did you know that I've been on a cover of a magazine before?
Really?
Yeah.
Which one?
I'm going to show it to you.
Okay.
Okay? Called Full Package. True story. Now,
I love it.
you should see the centerfold.
I love it. Okay.
You want to see it?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Okay. Maybe
Full
later.
package.
Maybe later.
Just kidding around with you. So I want to go back. We're going to go back and talk about Progressive Music Center. Tell me about what happened there.
Well, Progressive Music Center is really, I mean, you know, I'm really better known for my work with Progressive Music Center than I was as a performing drummer. That's where I just spent the last 25 years of my life. It ate up all of my time. That was my baby, right? And so going back, back to the Pterodactyl days, when I was getting out of Fountain of Youth, that band, I knew that I needed some kind of stable income. And, stability in the music business is very hard. I mean, you kind of wait for the next gig and that sort of thing. But
we talked about you being a hired gun.
Right, yeah. Well, that's kind of what I thought it was going to be, and there were some ads in Modern Drummer. I should have brought them, but there were some ads in Modern Drummer where I had a ProMart drumstick endorsement, and they made a drumstick for me, had my name on it. It's kind of like if you're playing Major League Baseball, get your name on a Louisville Slugger, right?
Exactly.
And my wife was awesome about it. She had them put in like a box, like a shadow box for me, and I still have it at the house. It's just incredible. But so I was playing ProMart drumsticks, and I had some endorsements. I had Bosphorus cymbals and Evans drum heads and all that, Yamaha drums, and but they did an ad, and it was in Modern Drummers. I had an ad in Modern Drummer, and I was listed as an independent, meaning that I could play with anybody. I wasn't with one band. But I've quickly found out that independent also it has an equal sign behind it that says phone doesn't ring, right? It's like no money in the bank, that kind of thing. And so I just thought, I really need to figure out a way to have something that's a little more stable. And I want to play drums. I want to stay in the industry. I've got to figure this out. So way back, going back to probably 1992, I decided I'm going to teach drum lessons. I mean, hey, you do what you know, right? And do what you love. And so I had this beat up Zuzu Trooper and my wife can testify to this, that I would go pick her up for dates, and we'd have to drive her car, because the first time I went to go get her, I got out and I slammed the door and heard this bam. I didn't know what it was, and so we walked out to go on our date, and she walked around the other side and she said, "Your door's on the ground over here." The door, the hinges had rotted off or rusted off, but I had this Zuzu Trooper, and you could this thing, the fumes would come through the dash, and if you rode around with the windows up, it would make you high. Like, I mean, the exhaust would come through. It was bad. And at that time, I didn't have any money to my name. This was actually before we started dating, but I was still driving that same Isuzu Trooper. And I think I had 78 cents. I mean, literally, I counted it out. I had this apartment on 10th Street in Greenville. Man, I was starving. I mean, I probably had eaten all day, and I was eating beans, and counted out 78 cents. I thought, man, I got to get a flyer. So again, going back to kind of how I did it with drum. I mean, this was light years ahead of what I did with my first flyer. But I got a Modern Drummer magazine, and I went through it, and I said, "Oh, that's cool. That's a cool picture. I'll take that." And I just took a pair of scissors, cut it out, and I cut out the mass or words or whatever, and I formed it, and I took a 8.5 piece of 11 typing paper, put it on there, and taped it all to it, and glued it to it or whatever. That's my first flyer. And I walked about 1.5 miles down to Kinko's Copies, and I had a friend down there named Jim Burry, and Jim was a bass player for a local band in town that was really well known, and I gave it to him, and I said, "I need 500 copies, and Jim says, "Okay," and I went, "And I've got this much money." And Jim goes, "You know what? I don't have time to count your pennies." He said, "I'm going to do you a solid." He said, "Come back tonight and pick these up." And I said, "Okay." So I walked all the way back, so walked down there and picked them up. Sure enough, he had them printed for me, folded, ready to go. And didn't charge me for it. thanks to Kinko's Copies and Jim
So
Burke.
the rhythm section always sticks together.
You know what I mean? Bass player looked out for me. And so I took them around to all the music stores the next day, ended up getting my first couple of drum students. And what I was doing, I was going house to house. So I would drive to your house, and I was like the ice cream guy, but instead of serving ice cream, I was serving drum lessons. I was serving drum beats, at the back. And I had all my equipment in the back, and I would drive around. I would go do the lessons or whatever. And it dawned on me not too long into it that, instead of me going to them, they need to come to me. Because the amount of time it takes for me to drive them, I can teach two lessons if I'm stable and they're coming to me. So I went to Pearson Music, and again, my name is Billy Cuthrell. I've got a drum business. I had my spiel. I had my talk, and they said, "Oh, okay." I knew Curtis Pearson a little bit. He had played in a band with my dad back in the '50s, and so they put me in like a little broom closet in the back. There was not much to it. You could barely get a full drum set in there, and that's how I started. It was called Progressive Beat at the time. And it started there, and it just really floundered along for years, and until I got real serious about it. Because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to be a touring drummer, if I really want to focus on the business side of it. I just wasn't real sure. And then as I started going to NAMM and it all kind of melded together, the timeline, I decided, I think I'm going to stay on this side because I can sleep in the same bed every night. I'm not traveling. I'm not waiting for the phone to ring. I'm just, really thinking I'm going to go on the business side of it.
So that turned out really growing for you.
It did. It grew pretty well. And so we were in Greenville, and I got my first guitar teacher, a guy named Dan. I can't think of Dan's last name now, but he was in East Carolina. And Dan started teaching guitar for me. And then we decided we were going to move to Wilmington. And we went down there, and I was teaching down there as well. And I was driving from Wilmington to Greenville once a week, and man, God bless my in-laws. They did a ton, for me too, because they would let me stay at their house while I was up here, and that really helped, expense-wise. And so I would come up from Wilmington, stay at their house, teach 1 or 2 days, and then go back to Wilmington at the end of the week. So I ran that route for a couple of years, running 2 hours up, 2 hours down. And we were down in Wilmington for a couple of years, and it just, Wilmington at that time was pretty tough. We weren't service business. My wife was working for an architect down there, and I was trying to struggle along, and we were just making ends meet, best we could. And then we went to Raleigh after that. We moved to Raleigh in '99 or 2000.
I was going to ask you what made you relocate to Raleigh.
My wife got a job, thank God. Because it was, we were, struggling musicians. She was working for a great architect down there, but, Wilmington was pretty tough. But she got on with Glaxo in Raleigh.
Good company.
Yeah, and she got on with them. I was there for about 13 years, and I was there for a while. And but we came up to Raleigh, and best move we probably made. We had talked about going to Nashville. I thought, at the time I was spending a lot of time in Nashville, going back and forth for NAMM and stuff like that. But she got on in Raleigh, and she came up before I did. She had to start. We had a house down there we had to do something with, or we had to wait till the lease run out or whatever. But so we came up, and when we got up here, I knew some people in Raleigh that I had known from Greenville from the very first flyer I put out.
Right.
And a guy named Max Acker. And I went to Max and I said, hey, I'm trying to open another studio location up here. I still have the one in Greenville. I'm still teaching in Wilmington. And Max said, okay. And we struck a deal where I rented half of the building that's now Guitar Center in Raleigh, but it was Music Loft at the time. And I struck a deal with them, I think I've been better at business than I've been at drumming. I'm probably here drum-wise, talent-wise, it's like Jim Chapin used to say, people have more talent in their little finger than you've got in your whole body. Well, I'm the guy that, I don't have the talent in the whole body. Most people have their little finger, right? But I try, but as far as business goes, I think, here's me drumming, here's me business-wise. I think about things differently, in business. And so I just quickly figured out I was better at deal making and selling things and being a business person than I really was probably a music.
We got to understand, when Norris Tolson and Alan Matthews come to me about somebody that needs to be on the show, I'm like, who could you possibly be talking about? And you're the guy that has a lot of impact.
Yeah, well, that's very nice of them. It's very nice of them. you know, and I mean, I just think that I got extremely fortunate, you know, and we were talking about it the other day, and I said, you know, I'm a firm believer. I got really lucky too. I taught at Appalachian State for a semester, and they let me loose on college kids, which I was like, "Are you crazy?" But I used to tell the class all the time, 90% of life is showing up. Right? You don't have to know anything; just show up. You don't have to say anything; just show up, because that opens the door to opportunities. You don't know what you don't know what you're missing if you're not there. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so, I think I've just been extremely fortunate that I had the energy to get up and just show up, you know, and I think that's a lot of it, you know.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a crazy story. You're almost like the musical Forrest Gump. You're falling into every possible category that could be a good thing.
Right, yeah.
So I want to throw a couple of names at you as drummers. I want your opinion.
Okay, sure.
Stuart Copeland.
Stuart Copeland with the Police. That's right, with the Police. I've met Stuart on a couple of occasions. I've been super fortunate because of my association with NAMM and just being in the business for so long that I've been around a lot of these guys. And you kind of, when you're around them and cameras aren't going, you kind of see the true character. And you're always told, don't meet your heroes, that kind of thing. And, you know, I've met some of my biggest drumming heroes, and they've been some of the coolest people on the planet, and some have been some of the biggest letdowns on the planet. Stuart was really a nice guy. You know, I don't know how he has the energy he has at his age. I mean, and Stuart's not an old guy, but he's just, I mean, Stuart still, I mean, he still plays really well. Great player, you know, and I mean, the Police, come on. I mean, it's some classic, that's some really, really classic stuff, yeah.
Ringo Starr.
Ringo is a musician, not a technician. And that's an important thing to understand about a lot of musicians. You either play for the song or you play to the song. And you figure out what you're serving, right? And I love Ringo's playing because he plays to the song. He plays it more like a guitar player. You know, if you listen to his parts were really based off of what George Harrison and what, you know, what was really going on, not what McCartney was doing on bass. It was really based on what Harrison and what Lennon were doing on guitar, and really the vocal track. You know, and Ringo's on record, I think, saying that. You know, but another great player. You know, and just the recording techniques. I mean, he recorded 90% of his parts with tea towels on his drums. You know, I mean, it's really interesting.
I'm almost afraid to ask you, because I know it leads to a lot more.
Right.
Neil Peart.
Rush. Neil Peart from Rush. That's right. Neil, phenomenal player. Neil was always an interesting outlier to me because Neil, and the whole band Rush is interesting. You notice they never did solo albums and they never played with anybody else, right? We see the same thing with the guys in U2. You see the same thing with the guys in Metallica, except for Rob Trujillo, Metallica's bass player. He was in Suicidal Tendencies, Ozzy Osbourne, that kind of thing. But you never see those guys doing solo albums because I think they're great players, but they know they're great as a whole. So the sum is greater than the parts, right? And Neil was always like that. You know, if you look on YouTube, Neil did do some solo stuff outside of Rush, but he did a Buddy Rich tribute album, which, you know, greatest of all time, Buddy Rich, right? I mean, there's some guys out there now that would take it to a next level, like Vinnie Colaiuta, Dennis Chambers. You know, guys. There's a guy, Thomas Lang. There's another guy on YouTube. There's some Brazilian guy that's just, this guy's a freak of nature. He's a mutant. You know, I mean, nobody should be able to play like that, But Neil, you know, when you listen to him in the Buddy Rich thing, Neil was great, but he just, you know, there were other guys that really just ran circles around him. So he was really fantastic in that Rush idiom. Right. But you take him out of that, and it's like, you know, it's kind of interesting. You know.
So Buddy Rich or Hal Blaine?
Buddy Rich, yeah. Buddy, Hal was another musician, not a technician. You know, Hal played the big, you know, the big 13 tom-tom, you know.
But he played on so many hit songs.
He played on so many hit songs, but you put Buddy Rich on that, and all of a sudden it sounds completely different, right? You know, it's one of my big influences is Alex Van Halen. Oh, yeah. And, man, I just love his playing. I've always loved his playing. I've always tried to emulate that sound. And you know, I was fortunate enough to meet him through Jim Chapin. And, I mean, it was like, you know, again, meeting the Pope, right? And but I made a comment. I said, I've always tried to get your sound. And he looked at me and he said, good luck. He said, because I've always tried to get my sound too. You know, and you just can't, the way he hits the drum and the way I hit, if we played the exact same drum, it would sound different. Right. It's a feel thing, it's a touch and a feel thing.
So look, we're running out of time here. There's something I want you to do.
Running me out of town. Running out of town.
We mentioned Will Ferrell.
Oh gosh.
I want you to play the cowbell real quick. Like I said, we're out of time.
Right.
Really quick. So look,
Huh? Oh, no way.
hey, thanks for coming on here, man. This has
Absolutely.
been a great
thanks for having me.
conversation.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Gonna have
Thanks
to
for
have you
having
back. We got more to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Sit tight. I'll be right back. Hey, I want to thank my special guest tonight, Billy Cuthrell. Such a great interview. This guy is full of so many stories. So next week, a guy named Steve Barcello will be here. The Cryptozoology and Paranormal Museum, it's hard to say, in Littleton. He will be here. The Bigfoot guy will be here live. So make sure you tune in every Thursday night at 10 o'clock. Thanks for watching. See you soon.